So the next chapter was on stress and resilience. And I'd love for you to share. And anytime you want to weave in some of your wonderful stories of your clients and your travel stories, oh my goodness, it just brought the book to life. Uh,
Mm.
so I love the story in this chapter on stress and resilience of the Virunga National Park in Rwanda, and and linking it to the stress response. I think one of the major takeaways that I took from your book is that the stress response, I mean, we need it. It's helpful. It helps us survive, but it really should be in short spurts. And I get the sense that we've actually lost the art of turning that stress response down. And yeah,
Mm.
so
Yeah, sure.
if you could talk to us about that and what is it? It's so simple about the breath that can actually untangle that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great. I think first of all we should explain that the book is actually every chapter in the book that we're talking about right now. There's a story from my travels. So I did cycle around the world on my mountain bike, as you do, and had all sorts of crazy experiences. And so every single chapter that I have actually starts with a story from my travels, whether it is what I'm going to tell you about in a moment, or having machine guns in my ribs, or catching malaria in Africa. So all of these stories will frame the chapter, the lesson that I learned from that experience, and
Yes.
then how you can benefit from that. So that's how the book is set out. And this
Mm.
particular chapter you're talking about on stress and resilience, the story that I open up with on that one is when I was traveling through Rwanda and Uganda. I really wanted to go visit the gorillas up in the high mountains. Actually, it's the area where Diana Fossey had her family of gorillas that worked with gorillas in the mist. It wasn't the best time to be there at the time because the Congolese president was assassinated, just next door. So there was a lot of political unrest in the area. It wasn't the safest place to be, but we were there anyway, and we sort of went for it.
Mm.
So climbing up into the mountains, first time ever to visit the mountain gorillas of Africa, and heading through all the bush, and as you're climbing up, you're getting cut by all the trees and limbs. It's quite a dangerous sort of adventure to start with. You have a team of guides with you carrying machine guns and machetes, and they're sort of chopping their way through. So we were on looking for the mountain gorillas of Rwanda, and they didn't seem to be anywhere in sight. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, like we were sort of halfway up the mountain, this family was present there, because I noticed that one of the mountain guides was making these funny noises to sort of alert them. And out of nowhere, this big, huge silverback gorilla came mock charging me. And I didn't even know what it was. All the bush started moving and quite violently, and came mock charge, came straight towards me. And we got told, you're not able to look into the eyes of the gorillas. You have to look down. So I looked down, and literally just brushed past my legs, and he went a bit further ahead. So that initial surge of adrenaline, and it's exactly what a fight and flight response is. So
Yeah.
obviously you read about it in textbooks and you know about it in sort of the stress response sort of
Right.
idea. But this was a real version of it. Shall I turn around and run and take flight, or shall I turn around and fight? I've got no chance against a 600-kilo silverback gorilla. But I was in that moment, and I froze basically. So, and that was probably the safest thing to do, is to freeze. But I will say this, that after the gorilla took a few steps ahead and walked ahead, he like ripped out this big piece of bamboo and started chewing on it. And he looked back at me. And I know we're not supposed to look in his eyes, but I did look in his face. And I just felt the opposite of fight and flight response. I felt totally at peace, because this gorilla was absolutely beautiful. His eyes were beautiful, looking at me, and he's just sort of eating this bamboo there, and just felt this connection with this animal. And then the whole family came out, and there was aunties and uncles and children. It was a family of about 12, I think, all in all. And it was an amazing experience for a few hours, and it was just absolutely beautiful, this connection we had. But then what happened, it actually started raining. So it started like pelting down with like monsoonal rain. And there's a beautiful little baby, who's only 6 months old, also, that came towards me and wanted to sort of hug me, and you had to sort of back off. So it was a beautiful experience. So, but what happened when it started raining, the mother gorilla started leading her crew, her tribe or pack into the bush. So we went into the bush, and funnily enough, the guide also led us into the bush and said, let's follow the gorillas behind. And I thought, oh my God, we're crazy following this family of gorillas into this bamboo thicket. But we did anyway, and we followed into this bamboo thicket, and you couldn't really see. It was quite dark, and there was a mix of us humans and a mix of gorillas, and there's all these sort of shapes around, and we were literally meters, sometimes even just feet away from the gorillas, huddled up in this little shelter, sort of sharing this experience. There was babies, there was little ones there. One of the gorillas grabbed a machete, stole it off of the guard, and started flying around, and it was crazy. It was a really surreal experience. But then what happened, another fight and flight response was triggered, was we started hearing this crashing through the bushes coming through. And even the guides were a bit afraid. I noticed the guides sort of like back off. And one of the guides even hid behind me and hid behind other people. And this guy's got a machine gun in his hands. And the head guide started making these guttural noises. It's like a gorilla sort of groan, and that sort of lets other gorillas know that we're here. Anyway, I knew the big silverback gorilla was in with us, so it couldn't have been him. There was another silverback gorilla that was following us, and he was even bigger than the original silverback gorilla. So he came to the doorway, and he basically, shutted out the whole place. And he come charging into the bamboo thicket. We had nowhere to go because we were sort of stuck there. And he whacked one of my companions with a backhander on the back of his arm, and then stopped there and made this growl and a groan. I thought, oh my God, another surge of adrenaline going through my body again. It's like fight and flight response all over again. But again, he did the same thing. He sort of let us know that he's here. He took a few steps and he settled and just sort of kept an eye on his family. So within the space of this 1 hour or so, 2 pure shots of adrenaline and, this fight and flight response really, I really felt the effect of it. And what we're talking about there, it is designed for short-term stimulus. It is designed to get you out of that situation. It is designed, it's helped us survive as a species. But bringing it into the modern world that we live in, it's not designed to be switched on all the time. It's not designed to be humming along in a fight and flight response all the time. And that's what we do at work. Emails, ping, the boss comes in, ping, it's just, constantly going on this fight and flight response. So it is a handy mechanism to have.
Yes.
And I really felt the realness and the rawness of it in that moment. But I also realized it's not a good mechanism to be switched on all the time, every day, because it will lead to burnout eventually.
Yeah, and that's what wears us down. By the way, everybody, that's just a little glimpse of just amazing stories, as Mello said, that frames every chapter of the book. And that's why I've been saying the stories just bring the book to life. And I'm glad we were able to at least get one story in there. What a remarkable experience you've had, not just there, Mello, but in all of your travels. It's really amazing. In our modern world, there's a common, as Mello said, the boss, a colleague, a family member, a comment on social media. I mean, we're constantly bombarded. And so that stress response gets triggered constantly. It seems to me, Mello, that more now in our modern life compared to maybe our ancestors of hundreds of years ago, that we need to learn now more than ever how to turn that stress response down. It's needed, it's necessary, it helps us survive. But when it's turned on and it's on constantly, we worn down, and so could you tell us a little bit more about how the breath can turn down that stress response? It's really interesting, sometimes I say, let's do a little breathing exercise, sometimes especially with the, students in high school or something like that, and there'll be a little chuckle. And I'm not sure what's so funny. I'm just so grateful that we're breathing every second of every day.
Yeah, exactly. Some of us aren't even aware of the breath. We're not even aware that we're breathing, and that's why that first piece is self-awareness. So the first piece to prevent burnout happening in the first place is being self-aware. Then the second piece is having the ability to self-regulate. Right. So learning how to self-regulate, and that's where the breath can come into it. That 90-second breath break that we played with earlier, that is the perfect tool to down-regulate the amygdala. The amygdala is what triggers the fight and flight response and actually down-regulates that quite immediately. As soon as we breathe slowly, especially on the exhale,
that's right,
it tricks the body into a relaxation response.
Yes.
So you cannot be in a full stress response if you're breathing slow. So the breath is the ability to self-regulate. I was reading something recently also that says a sigh, like human beings naturally sigh around about every 5 minutes. And
Right.
it's actually the body's natural mechanism to actually release, stress and cortisol and self-regulate. So a human sigh is actually regulated for that. But the other interesting thing on that article that I was reading was social media, emails, all of these things, when you're switched on all the time and you don't switch off, it actually stops that sigh happening. So you're
Oh,
getting
wow.
in, yeah, so you're getting in this overstimulated state and you're
Right.
staying there. So this natural sigh, and we can trick our body into a sigh by actually doing another breathing technique, which is basically two in breaths as snatching an in breath and then a long out breath like this, like, ah,
That that
ah.
um that physiological sigh, Mello, is something that I've read about. Dr. Andrew Huberman and some others,
Yes,
and I've actually been doing that myself, and it's just amazing. I've been teaching it to other people, and it's really simple, everybody. And
mm,
it's two inhales through the nose, as Mello showed, and a long exhale.
ah, yeah,
It's a long exhale through the mouth. And they're talking about 5 minutes a day, but I've actually noticed even just doing five of those breaths,
yes,
just like that, it is just really powerful. So yeah,
totally.
just
Yeah.
yeah, really wonderful, Mel. So thank you.